Hello, my friends. I hope everyone's doing super dandy today, because for today's video, today we're going to be talking about all things crochet and how to make your first crochet garment, your first piece of clothes with crochet if you've never done it before, and just teach you the whole meal deal and how to get started. Even the cheesecake at the end. I ate cheesecake last night and oh my goodness. That's my one weakness. Like, I could probably eat a whole cheesecake to myself. What was I even talking about? But anyways, crochet. Crochet is very similar to knitting in the sense that they both use yarn. You put it, you mix it all together, and you get something, out of it. And if you've never knit before or crocheted, you probably cannot tell the difference between a crocheted garment and a knit garment. You probably think they're like the same. Or you probably just assume everything is knitted. But they're different because crochet, it cannot be replicated with a machine. It can only be hand done because it is just very complicated, and a machine, you can't do it. It can't do it. Meanwhile, in knitting, there are a ton of knitting machines out there, and most of the garments that you wear, or I think pretty much all of them, they're made by machine. But if you have a crochet garment, that was handmade. But before we can get really into crochet and how to make your own garments, let's get into the supplies you actually need to make your first thing. So obviously you're gonna need a crochet hook, one of these bad boys. And these are relatively very cheap. You can get them all the way from a few dollars all the way up to like, I don't know, $15, $20. The next thing you're gonna need is some yarn, and in my last video I did go down the rabbit hole of yarn, so I'm not gonna get too in depth about all the varieties of yarn. I'll just mention all my favorite yarns that I like for crochet, where you can get them, etc. You're also going to need a yarn needle, which you could get by for a bit, but I would just recommend getting a yarn needle. You're going to need scissors, which I bet you already have. Stitch markers, which you can use stitch markers like the fancy ones, or you can just use scrap yarn for this. And you'll probably be needing a measuring tape or ruler or something to measure. So for hooks, there are tons of different hooks out there, not necessarily in style unless you're getting Tunisian crochet, but I'm not going to get into that. We're just getting into basic crochet. And they either come in metal, plastic, metal or plastic, and sometimes they're fancy where they have a covering, so it's, nice. It's like picking out a pen. Like, you can get a real nice pen that's fancy and just fits really nice in your hand. Or you can get the basic cheap pen, and that works too. As for yarns now, there are, again, tons of different yarns out there, all the way from natural fibers to acrylic to bamboo, cotton, mohair, alpaca. But choosing your yarn will depend on your budget, the material you want to use, if you want to use a natural fiber, if you want to use like acrylic that is plastic. Also, like the season, how you care for it. Like, you can get down the real deep rabbit hole of yarns, and I kind of went down that in my last video, so I'll link it down below, the timestamp of where I talk about all the yarn, if you really want to dive into it, Really, yeah, okay. But I'm just going to share with you my personal favorite yarns for crochet, because they're different than knitting. So for crochet, I typically like making summer pieces or lighter pieces, so I tend to go with cotton. And one of my favorite ones is the Woman Shiny Happy Cotton here. It is so soft. It's also not too thin, so you can actually make a project pretty fast. And it's cotton, so it's breathable. I used this yarn in a recent video when I made the Malibu sweater, aka Tom Daly's sweater that he made. Is real nice. Another cotton yarn I really like is the Paint Box cotton yarn here. These are very, very cheap. This is the most affordable one, and there are so many pretty colors in this yarn. It does come very small, so you probably have to order a lot of these in order to make like a garment, but I also really like this one. If you're wanting something a little bit warmer and not for summer, I really like this duo yarn here, and this one is made with 55% merino wool and 45% cotton, so it's not too warm, it's not itchy, it's like a perfect blend. And then I also really like crocheting with mohair just because it's nice, it's light, it's fuzzy, it's pretty. But as for getting yarns, these yarns might not be available to everyone, or they might be super difficult to find. So you don't have to buy these specific ones I showed you. Those are just my personal preference in my region. I'm in Canada, so these are easy to get. But if you're in other places of the world, I would really recommend checking out your local yarn stores, or even if you're in Canada, United States, North America, check out your local yarn stores. But if you looked up on Google and you're like, dang it, there's no yarn stores near me, oh no, it's okay, because I have some recommendations for you guys. I can tell you where I got my yarns. I don't know if everyone can get them, but this is just, you know, moi. So my favorite one is Love Crafts, just because they have a wide variety of all different kinds of brands, yarns, just everything on there. So that's usually my go-to for yarn. I also really like Wool in the Gang, where I get this cotton yarn. I like Hobie. They have tons of really good yarns on there, and they're also really affordable. And my local yarn stores. But if you are a yarn veteran and you order yarn all the time online, maybe you guys can recommend your favorite yarn stores to buy yarn online. Now that we covered yarn and my favorite yarns, I love yarn. I do want to give you guys a little pro tip, which I personally did not know when I first started into, you know, the yarn community, is that each yarn you guys get, it will tell you right on the package here what needle or what hook size you can use, or what they recommend for the yarn. Also has other things like how to wash it, so, you know, just look at the labels when buying yarn. So we got our supplies. We are, you know, getting our motor ready to actually go now. Move. You know, we got everything here. So now how do we get started? I feel like such a teacher there, where, you know, they ask a rhetorical question where you're like, how do we get started? Well, this is how you get started. I don't know where I was going with that. First projects. I was a little bit of an overachiever when I first started, and I jumped right into a tank top, and that was my first project. Looking back, I probably should have started with a tea towel, like a dishcloth first, because then I would have been able to practice and just get my stitches under control and be able to make a nice rectangle first, or a nice square, before I jumped into a project. And I had a few mistakes in there. One, I was a newbie, so obviously I wasn't very good. Two, I was using a dark color yarn, so it was very hard to see my stitches. So if you're a newbie, use a light color yarn. And three, the yarn was very fuzzy, so that made it even more difficult to see my stitches, so I lost some along the way, and, you know, it curved in a bit. But first project, it really depends on you and what you can handle, or what you think you can handle. If you just want to do something super quick and see if you even like it, I would start with a dishcloth. But if you're an overachiever like myself, you can start with the tank top that I created in that video. Or you can make a scarf, or you can make a headband. Those are all three real easy projects to start off with. And with those projects, you only need to know 3 different techniques. So you're gonna need to know a slip knot, a chain stitch, and a single crochet. Those are the 3. And with those 3 skills, you can actually make a ton of items. Get really good at them, get comfortable with them before you really start to get into other stitches, because once you master those, you can really do anything, because all the other stitches, or most of the other stitches, are pretty similar. Like a double crochet, half double crochet, they're almost the same. After you're done with those, you know, you're feeling good, you're confident with them. Then I would try to do a half double crochet, a double crochet, increases, decreases. But like I said in my last video when I was talking about knitting, I personally didn't learn any of those until I really had to. So I started to learn them when I started purchasing patterns or getting free patterns, and it told me the pattern, you gotta do a double crochet here. And then I, went on to the Google, the YouTube, and learned how to do it. That's pretty much how you're gonna learn most of the crochet techniques, unless you're really searching for different stitches out there. You're gonna learn them all from patterns. Anyways, I compiled a list of a whole bunch of different places you guys can get free patterns, because who doesn't love a free pattern? So one, Lovecraft, they have tons of free patterns. They also have paid patterns, but they just have a real good variety of free patterns, which is pretty incredible. Number 2 is Hobby, and they have tons. It is crazy. They have everything in knitting and crochet, so you can find everything from garments to pillows to socks to bags to scarves, hats, like just everything on there. Number 3 is Wool Knitting. They have tons of free patterns on there, from crochet hats to tops to skirts to dog beds. Just still mind-blowing to me how many free patterns are out there and how amazing they are. Number 4 is Ravelry. Ravelry is very popular in the knitting and crochet community. Pretty much anyone that makes a pattern puts their pattern on Ravelry, so you can get down a real deep rabbit hole with that one and go through billions of patterns, because there's a ton on there. Number 5, which is Drops, and all of their patterns are free, which is pretty incredible. They have knitting and crochet, so you can go down that rabbit hole again, except they're all free. All of them. I put one of the patterns on my 22 patterns for 2022, and that was the winter fishery bucket hat that I want to crochet. It's pretty, right? And number 6 is We're Knitters. They have tons of free patterns again, so you can definitely go down the rabbit hole with all these sites I mentioned. You can really go down the rabbit hole because there are just so many free patterns on there. You'll just have to check them out yourself and see which ones you like. Now for paid patterns. You can get paid patterns in the same form, like I mentioned in the free patterns, where you just get a PDF and it comes with supplies, instructions, and that's how you get the pattern. But there's also kits out there, which I also recommend for beginners if you have the money. Sometimes they can be a little bit more pricey, but you're often getting really good supplies, like really quality yarn, really quality supplies with it. You get like a written pattern, everything's there. It's a lot simpler if you don't know anything about crochet. And the 2 places I've tried kits from is from Wool Knitting and We Are Knitters. Again, you can go down the rabbit hole with them too. So many kits. Another site I like to get my paid patterns from when I want to search, say I want to make a pair of shorts and knit, I go to Etsy and I just look up shorts knitting pattern. Not exactly that, but you get the point. And there's lots of people on there that are selling their own patterns, a lot of amazing designers on there. So check out Etsy. And the last place I personally buy my patterns from is Instagram, or that's where I find the paid patterns, because that is where I have learned about pretty much all the knit and crochet designers out there. And then I followed them, and then they have a website, and then they have patterns. So just the knitting community and the crochet community on Instagram. Here are some of my favorite designers in the crochet world that have amazing patterns you guys can purchase, and some of them even have free patterns, so check them out. But as for your first project, you probably aren't just gonna go out there and just, get a complicated crochet pattern. You're gonna wanna do something simple, like I mentioned, either a headband, a dish towel, a scarf, something simple. So I have found a few patterns and videos for you guys to watch on how to make your first garment, item, headband, I don't know, whatever you want to make for your first project. So I have made a tank top. That was my first project ever, and I teach you guys how to do it while I learn how to do it. I also made a crochet headband, which is super quick. It probably took me about an hour to do, and I've also made a video on that. But if you're not a huge fan of videos and you prefer written patterns, I've found a few written patterns. So I have this dish towel, dishcloth. What is it called? Dishcloth right here. Number 2 is this winter headband. Again, very nice and simple, easy for a first one. And if you guys are very, very, very eager to do something more complicated and you're just crazy, you want to do something harder, here is the winter fisher bucket hat that I am going to be doing this year sometime. I just like this pattern, and it's free again, like all the patterns I mentioned. But that is it for today's video. So I hope you guys enjoyed talking about crochet with me today. If you guys are starting crochet, you have never crocheted before, let me know down in the comments what you're gonna make for your first project. Or if you have more beginner project recommendations, let me know down in the comments so other people can try them out. Or if you have any other beginner tips that you want to share with other people who are starting crochet, let us know down below in the comments. Let's chat down there. Let's help each other out. But that's actually it. So I'm gonna go. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, a super dandy day, and I'll see you guys all in my next video. Bye! Bye!